I guess there's no real point in going into the stuff I liked about the story. I'll briefly touch on it. Chapter 4 is one of the best fucking levels I've ever played in a game. Um, from like him just walking around and looking at his old belt buckles to the Spanish coin to the fucking Chintamani pieces that he had or like the resin. Um, all that stuff was cool. It was nostalgic. It had the sound cues, the pictures of him and Tenzin. Like you just see him with Tenzin and he just says, "I miss you, buddy," and you immediately get the feels. Like you're not gonna cry or nothing, but you're just like, ah, Tenzin was so cool, and just it's a really nice trip down memory lane, and that part's great. Then you play Crash Bandicoot. No, no, Toy Gun. That was great. Then you play Crash Bandicoot. Oh, it like you lose your mind when you see it. You see the PS1 and you're like, oh, that's really cool. Then you see the Sony logo and the PlayStation, and you're like, oh, that's really, really cool too. They have the sound and the visuals. And then Crash Bandicoot comes on screen, and you're like, oh my god. And then Drake says Crash Bandicoot, and you're like, he said Crash Bandicoot. And then you actually play it, and it's just like, oh fuck. It's just, you lose your mind. It's awesome. It's such a crazy contrast to see Crash Bandicoot versus Uncharted 4. The graphical difference is just absolutely insane, and it's just, that was awesome. That was fucking awesome. And Drake's commentary over it's great. So I love Chapter 4. A lot of the stuff early on in the game is absolutely great. I think it's more around when you start to get towards the third act of the game. Not even the third act, but I guess it is the third act. When you get to the island, when you get marooned on the island looking for Sam, I feel like that's where the game kind of slows down a lot. Um, but the midsection with Madagascar and some of the other stuff in Scotland, all that stuff's really fun. Again, just a touch too much platforming. But my criticisms of the story. While I do think there's some great interactions with Elena and Drake, yeah, I mean, all that stuff's great. It tells a really good closure story between Drake and Elena and him finally actually retiring and him wanting to go on one last adventure. His interactions with Sully are great. The backstory with him and Sam, all of it's really, really good. My criticisms fall in on some of the really important parts of a story, though. Sam is a great character, but it's hard for me to get invested in him and Drake's relationship when we've never seen this character before, and this is the final chapter of the story. We never knew Drake wanted to find Avery's treasure. We never knew about this Rafe guy from his past. We never knew about Sam. Also, the game does not cover its bases on Sam. I mean, yeah, he thought he died, so he never mentioned him, but where was Sam when Drake met Sully? There's no mention of a brother. Obviously, Sam didn't exist, but they didn't even cover their bases on, like, why didn't Drake mention him? Where was he? Like, we don't get any indication that they were separated as children after they changed their name to Drake. In fact, it's more implied that they were really close and they were teaming up a lot to find the fucking Avery treasure and everything. That's why he was in the Panamanian jail, which was also a nice callback to the first game when he mentioned being in a Panamanian jail. Um, but yeah, there's tons of cool stuff like that. I like hearing some of the characters say, "Oh, Nathan Drake discovered, Iram of the Pillars and everything, and like he's discovered Shambhala and El Dorado, and it's cool to hear that stuff. It's cool to see Drake. He's kind of like, like Sam is like, "Oh, this is so cool. We're looking for pirate treasure," and he's like, "Yeah, it's cool," because he's done it 3 times already. He's like, "Oh, that's the biggest. That's the second biggest cistern I've ever seen." There's lots of cool stuff like that in the story. But Sam as a character, just, and you can tell I'm very mixed and all over the place when it comes to the story. Because on one hand, it is really good and it is really great. But on the other hand, they don't cover their bases with Sam in a lot of areas. Sam and Drake's relationship is hard to get invested in when it's just being introduced in this game. The villain is weak. Rafe, nowhere near what Lazarevich and Marlowe were, in my opinion. He's a cool character. I like his attitude. I like his, he's trying to suppress this rage, suppress this really angry side. But I thought he was just going to lose it at the end, and he kind of does. But the boss fight is, I'm not a big fan of the boss fight. I mean, Nathan Drake's sword fighting is cool, and the place burning around you is cool, and the fight is cool. But for the final boss fight of the final Uncharted game against a guy that we didn't know Drake had any history with, I mean, maybe if Sam had actually turned out to be the villain, maybe there would have been a lot of emotional weight there. But being Rafe, just, eh. Rafe was alright. He did his purpose. He wasn't a terrible villain. He wasn't even bad. I just thought he was one of the weaker villains to go out on in such a great franchise when you had villains like Lazarevich and Marlowe and even Talbot. So, but he's definitely better than like Navarro and fucking Roman. He's definitely better than them from the first game. They were shitty villains, but with all that being said, it's a mixed bag story for me. The only Uncharted game I really don't have any major issues with when it comes to the story is Uncharted 2. And so, as someone who really appreciates the story in a video game and how everything comes together, I definitely have to give Uncharted 2 my favorite position when it comes to the games. From a storytelling standpoint, it just did everything right. They struck lightning in a bottle, and they just did it perfectly with Uncharted 2. But this game is still fantastic. Would I put it above 3? I'd probably put it on par with 3, because the 3 still has the really enjoyable set pieces. Another thing this game doesn't have, Drake pulling grenade pins and kicking enemies away, grabbing objects from the environment and smacking enemies with them, throwback grenades, all that stuff is pretty much gone. There's a couple of moments where you'll pull a guy from a ledge and he'll grab onto your leg and you have to shake him off, but for the most part, a lot of that really cool stuff is removed, which is a shame because it makes the gameplay feel less intense at times, even though the gameplay is still very intense. It just would be cool. I mean, there's still moments where Drake will knock a guy out, catch his gun in midair. That stuff's still there, but I do feel like it was a bit cooler and a bit more stylized in Uncharted 3. And maybe it's because Drake's a little older and he can't do all of that anymore, but they don't really imply that, so I don't know. But when you have a fantastic product, the little problems are going to stand out, and these are little problems. Most of the stuff I've mentioned, like the pullback, fucking pull the string, kick a guy away, grenade goes off, blows him up, or, catching a grenade and throwing it back, those are small nitpicks. I don't know why they were removed, but they're small. They're not that big of a deal. They just stand out a bit more in my mind because the game itself is so great and almost perfect. And the narrative stuff I will consider more of a big deal, but again, with everything else, with the gameplay and the multiplayer, you still have a 9.8 fantastic experience of a game on your hands when you pick this game up. I definitely think it's worth the $60. I think if you're a fan of multiplayer, you're going to be able to put a lot of hours into it, and I definitely think the story is worth it. It's the longest Uncharted game, for better or worse, with some of that platforming, in my opinion, but still, absolutely fantastic. Love the game. Pretty much all I have to say about it. So, what did you guys think of Uncharted 4: A Thief's End? Tell me in the comment section below. I'd love to hear it. Also, tell me what you thought of the review. I feel like this is going to be a long one and a bitch to edit, but fuck it. Tell me in the comment section below. You can also follow me on Instagram or add me on PSN. I'm petplatypus on both. Also, give this video a thumbs up and share it on social media. Both of those would help me out a lot. Subscribe if you haven't already, or if you like what you've seen here. If you watched this entire video, you must have liked it at least a little bit, so hit that subscribe button. Check out more of my content. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.